Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ED&A. Looks like the sun is out, and we're going to have a good day to do our business here. So, Senator Carson is the prime sponsor on Senate Bill 485, our first hearing, but in her absence, Grant is going to introduce the bill for her, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning. My name is Grant Bossy. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff with the New Hampshire Senate, here to introduce Senate Bill 485 on behalf of Senator Sharon Carson, the bill's lead sponsor. She will be with you today, just not right now. Senate Bill 485 seeks to utilize technology to digitize and streamline occupational and professional licensing for military spouses and veterans in New Hampshire. In the fall of 2022, a coalition of military and veterans organizations identified digital occupational licensing as a way to assist military families facing work mobility challenges. Military families are 3 times more likely to move than civilian families, and this presents a number of challenges to military working families and spouses trying to maintain a professional career. Approximately 30% of military spouses maintain a professional or occupational license. A recent Department of Defense report found that half of military spouses experiencing a permanent change of station experience problems with finding employment, and approximately 40% experience a loss of income. Military spouses and veterans make up about 10% of the New Hampshire population, and many of these citizens move from state to state at a higher rate than the rest of us. This means the professional licensing and the efficient processing of licenses from state to state is a major issue for these workers and families. A digital licensing platform would create a secure, pre-verified database that provides the state with accurate, up-to-date information on individuals' licensing status, the goal being to reduce license approval times from weeks to months to just a few days. The process can also be flexible and customized to New Hampshire. Individual licenses can be excluded from the digital licensing process, or unique licensing requirements can be flagged for individual review and notification. In addition, depending on the needs of the state, the pre-verification process can be performed by an outside vendor or through collaboration between state agencies and vendors. Finally, several states are embracing the use of digital licenses. Kansas and Rhode Island have recently moved forward with military license reciprocity, and Virginia's Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation has taken a broader approach by initiating digital licensing for more than 114 types of licenses over 40 professions. Several years ago, New Hampshire embraced the concept of license reciprocity for the military, and this committee has always tried to make things easier for military families. SB 485 would be the next step to ensure the reciprocity process happens in an efficient and timely way. Senator Carson, thanks you for your consideration of SB 485.
Thank you, Grant. Would you like questions?
I would welcome questions. I would write them down and then get Senator Carson to answer them for you, or I would defer to the people behind me.
Any questions for Grant? Senator Perkins-Coker?
I'll put the question out there, and whoever is the right person can answer it. But I think this is great. I understand, especially being in Portsmouth, that we have military spouses that need to work. The digitally verifiable license, I hear everything you're saying about it providing an online up-to-date status. Is the idea that other states can kind of interact with this license and may be able to waive spouses into practicing in their jurisdiction, or that New Hampshire would be doing that? So, for example, I'm a lawyer licensed in. Okay, I see someone's going to answer this question. Maybe when, I don't know, I leave it up to the chair, but I'm a lawyer licensed in New York. When I applied to be a lawyer in Massachusetts, I could just waive in because I had already been practicing in another state. So that's my first question, is how does the digital license work across state lines? My second question is, if what you're describing is true, why limit bringing digitally verifiable licenses to military spouses, which might be a different question, but I welcome input from any of the future folks here on those points.
I would hope there are people behind me more qualified to answer those questions, and if you don't have an answer, we'll find one for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Kevin Grady. No particular order, I'm just picking some. I thought the Veterans Advisory Committee would be good on that.
Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, senators on the committee, for the record, my name is Kevin Grady. I am a 25-year veteran of our Air Force, and I'm a 25-year resident of the town of Hooksett, New Hampshire. I'm here today representing the State Veterans Advisory Committee, which is chartered by RSA 110-A:8, for those who want to look it up, to essentially speak for the veteran community in New Hampshire. And one of the things that we do is we look at the bills coming before the legislature that we feel have veteran impact. And there are 20 of them this go around. And we take a position at a rather lengthy meeting on what we want to do, and then I come and I tell you what our position is. We unanimously support this legislation, and I just wanted to bring up a couple things, and I know that there's folks more qualified to give you facts, figures, and numbers than I am. I'm just trying to give you our feelings about this. Number one, every time that we go to anyone, we always say that when one of us serves, the whole family serves. So we have a special appreciation for the sacrifices that our family members make in order to follow us around on a military career. The second thing that I want to leave you with is we're looking to try and grow employment. As the senator mentioned, over in the Portsmouth area, we're standing up a brand new tanker squadron, and that's going to bring in about 120 maybe active duty families that are going to rotate in and out. I'm not telling you anything you don't know about how New Hampshire, if you're young, you probably need 2 incomes in order to have your family survive. And if someone has a professional license, be they the veteran or the spouse, if we can get those folks ready to work in their chosen profession faster, then they won't have to, of necessity, do things that my wife did the entire time she followed me around, which was every place we went, she reinvented herself. We would like for these people to be able to stay on that same track. And the thing to leave you with at the end, and then I'll sit down and let people that have more knowledge of the facts and figures talk, is the fact that at some point, everybody who serves makes a decision that now it's time for me to get out and pursue a civilian life and raise a family and do those kind of things. The easier we make it for that spouse to be employed in New Hampshire when they have that experience, the more likely they are to say, I think I want to go back there. That concludes my testimony, and if you have any questions of that general nature that I can answer, fine. If not, I'm sure these other folks really know a lot about the facts and figures here.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the Department of Military Affairs. Warren Perry.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the members of the committee. For the record, my name is Warren Perry. I'm the Deputy Adjutant General for New Hampshire's Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services. My testimony will be very short. The department wholeheartedly supports this testimony as it eases transition for military and veterans coming into the state. I do think there is some ancillary benefit, some low-hanging fruit that we can gain from this. It helps us in our efforts to attract talent who are from transitioning military members to come here if we can ease the licensing process. And this is just one more, arrow in the quiver, for us to be able to continue to do that. We continue to work closely with OPLC and Executive Director Courtney to continue to do this. This is one thing that will help us do this, and anything we can do to ease that transition is great. So subject to any questions you might have, that'll be my brief statement.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate you. Terrence Sims. Good morning. Welcome to EDNA.
Thank you for having me. I'm gonna adjust here, my reading glasses.
It's fun getting older, isn't it?
Old age, Good morning. My name is Terrell Sims II. I'm the Executive Director for Military and Veteran Affairs for Merit International. I'm also a fourth-generation veteran, West Point graduate, and a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. So thank you for your time and allowing me to speak. So 14.5% of military spouses move across state lines each year, compared to 1.1% for civilian spouses. 33% of military spouses hold a state-issued license for work. 83% of military spouses report issues with licensing. 1 in 3 credentialed military spouses give up their license after a move. And 83% of voters surveyed nationwide support licensing reciprocity rules for military families. In the United States, there are nearly 1 million military spouses, 15% of whom move across state lines every year due to military transfers. About 1/3 of military spouses work in an industry that requires a professional license. 83% of military spouses report facing challenges transferring their license to a new state. Though licensing reciprocity legislation for military spouses already exists in 34 states, the execution is complicated to implement and are both confusing and time-consuming for military spouses, with spouses spending an average of 19 weeks seeking employment following military relocation. The military spousal unemployment rate is 21%, costing the American economy approximately $1.07 billion in lost production each year. My company, Merit, is a part of the Aspire Coalition, formed to accelerate the adoption of technology and processes needed to enable professional reciprocity by and between the states and territories for military spouses. The coalition, made up of organizations dedicated to supporting military families, facilitates states' adoption of a digital platform for military families with interoperable, verified digital licenses and credentials that transfer to states when they do. The Aspire Coalition members consist of Association of the United States Army, Blue Star Families, National Military Spouse Network, Veterans Health and Wellness Foundation, Women Veterans Interactive, Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce, Military Officers Association of America, U.S. Department of Defense Military Spouse Employment Partnership, Women Veterans and Families Network, and Workforce Solutions of Central Texas. Delays in transferring licenses have huge consequences for military families, but by using current state-of-the-art technology solutions, combining licensing portability legislation with a digital platform for interoperability, verified credentials speeds the process and simplifies the transfer of licenses from one state to another. For example, if an active duty service member receives PCS orders and their spouse is a nurse, the spouse would want to quickly find employment when they move to their new state. To do so, they would need to get a copy of their nursing license from the originating state and share it with the new state. However, they may encounter challenges and delays receiving and sharing a copy of the license, and once shared, the plausible different requirements between the states could cause the spouse to need additional training, furthering the time of relicensure. Add to that the fact that each state has a different process that the military spouse must navigate every time they move. With an effective digital solution, licensing portability requirements between states would be clearly mapped and communicated to military spouses and veterans, guiding them through the process of verifying their license. When PCS orders are received, military spouses would access the Merit app on their mobile device, select the originating state and the state they are transferring to, then the license for certifications they hold. The app would display the steps and documentation required for transferring their license. The license holder could also upload any requirement documentation, such as military orders, discharge orders, or marriage certificate. The spouse will no longer feel left in the dark during the process, as the app tracks the on-time status as the license and documentation are verified. The moment reciprocity is granted, the license holder would receive a digital version of their new license through the app, along with a QR code that potential employers can use for instant license verification. With the Merit solution, licensed spouses, veterans, and family members can get back to work weeks or months faster every time they must move, saving unemployment costs and helping bolster the local economy. In Illinois, it takes 2 to 3 months for healthcare workers to obtain a license. Its state government is currently in the process of solving this problem. Per the Pennsylvania Board of Nursing, it takes at least 12 weeks for its state's nurses to receive licenses. More than half of the 12,000 nurses who were issued licenses in 2021 waited at least 3 months. Your support for SB 485 is a tribute to military spouses like my mom and the hundreds of thousands who came before her, and to all those serving our nation today and in years to come. New Hampshire has the unique opportunity to quickly implement licensing reciprocity legislation, drive community economic growth, and most importantly, improve the lives of military families who call the Granite State home. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address this committee. I now open myself to questions.
Thank you very much. First question, do you have a copy of your written testimony?
I do.
That we could have, that would be very helpful. Thank you. There's a lot of great information in there. Questions from the committee? I think Senator Perkins-Coie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, so back to my original questions. You've addressed some of them, but essentially what you're proposing is an app or a private platform that
Correct.
is sort of certified by, amongst others, our state, and provides a digital copy of a license that can be accessed through a QR code. So,
Yes.
okay, some technological advancement here. you know, there's some cybersecurity questions I have that maybe you could just sort of address, like how the license is verified, how is it linked to the state databases, and how do you make sure it's, I guess, authentic? But in terms of the merit of trying to do this, you don't need to convince me of that. I want to understand the technology a little better.
Okay, so obviously I'm not the IT person, so
Yep.
if you have some like solid side questions and you want to give those to us, I can get you the answers to those with
Okay.
respect to the security aspect of things.
Yep.
From a technological action perspective,
Yeah.
we're partnered with organizations that do the verifying with the verified organizations in not companies, but the agencies that actually own those licenses.
Okay.
And so what we would, because that's all public record. So,
Yep.
so let's say I'm putting I'm using the app and I'm the nurse moving from Virginia, from Norfolk Naval Station to Portsmouth.
Yeah.
I'm going in and I'm clicking Virginia and New Hampshire and doing the cross-reference.
Yep.
And so my license is coming up in Virginia, and then it's also the license criteria for New Hampshire are also coming up. And so they're doing a one-to-one comparison. Now, because we'd be partnered with New Hampshire, we would be able to then go in and do the automatic verification behind the scenes to do the one-to-one comparison if there's a mismatch, right? So let's say New Hampshire says you need to pay an additional a fee, or you need 2 hours worth of training, you need to take an additional class. Then whoever owns that on the New Hampshire side, we'd have a link on the app so that I could then click on that link, do whatever training I need to do, or pay whatever a fee I need to pay that goes to New Hampshire, and then everything would be verified.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, maybe, it'd be helpful to sort of talk with someone in detail, but I'd be interested in Director Courtney's thoughts on
She's
this too. Okay.
I
Thank
saved
you.
her for last for a reason.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you, sir. We appreciate your testimony. All right, Director Courtney, you're up. You get all the hard questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Lindsay Courtney, Executive Director, OPLC. First, I would like to thank Senator Carson for bringing this forward. We wholeheartedly support easing burdens on military service members and their spouses transitioning to licensure in New Hampshire. We do not take a position on this bill in large part because we're already doing it. So last session, the legislature adopted House Bill 594, which has been codified at RSA Chapter 310-17. And it shifted the endorsement rulemaking authority from the boards to the office. And I want to talk a little bit about how we've implemented this in New Hampshire. The statute was effective in August. We immediately filed some interim rules for certain key professions that would have the greatest impact. We've been working on permanent rulemaking. We've already filed the fiscal impact statement, and as soon as we get that back, we'll file the permanent rules that encompass all of the requirements. But how it works is we don't, in this process, require paper verifications. Mainly, we've seen a rise in fraudulent activity, and we don't trust that as actual primary source verification. So somebody submits an application and we go right to that other state's website and we verify through that state's website, which is a primary source verification, that information, the fact that they're licensed. So in that sense, we're already digitally verifying licensure. I think I absolutely support modifications to our IT structure, and we're working on that at the moment. There are states that have already migrated to a QR code, and we would love to see that. Florida has that hanging on their licenses. I think that there are some feelings surrounding that, though, because some people like the paper copy versus the digitally verifiable copy. But in terms of internal process in the office, we don't trust anything unless we're getting it directly from the state. And all states, I believe, except for Alaska, have online primary source verification. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, we support the concept. We don't object to this. We're already achieving it. So we could consider this a win on day one.
I guess my first question is, do we need this? And will this create any conflict with what we're currently doing?
Well, I think it's placed in 332G, which is interesting because it technically only applies to Title 30 boards. Not all OPLC boards are Title 30 boards, and there are many license types like lawyers that are in Title 30 that this technically would apply to. So I think it depends on who we're trying to capture here. Is it strictly OPLC boards, and I would say we're already meeting those requirements, or is it everybody else in Title 30? If so, you probably would still need it.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Excuse me, Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you, Director Courtney. I also conceptually love this, and I'm heartened to hear that this is our current protocol as it is. And I understand from Senator Perkins-Coaker's previous question that this essentially is the authority to create and engage on this platform through an app that would be run by the state. We heard some bills last year that sought to lower the bar for reciprocity. And I'm curious as to how we would avoid doing that for reciprocity with a license. Or how would that, if we want our standards, which we have painstakingly put at a certain space, to remain the same. And so I would be reticent to engage in any kind of reciprocity with a state whose standards are lower than ours.
Yeah, so I think this bill wouldn't really address changing standards. I think HB 594 last year certainly addressed that issue. And the way we've tackled it in the office, because for true endorsement, you need to be comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So what we've done through rules is look at our statutes and say our statutes require X. This is what, and in rules we say, this is what we think would be substantially similar to what's in our statute. And then what we've done is conduct an assessment of every state and determined which state currently complies with those requirements, and we list those states. So if you are endorsing from that state, the only thing you need to do is submit an application, pay the fee, do a criminal history check if it's required, and then we verify your license online and you get a license. If you are endorsing from a state that does not have substantially similar requirements, you can still get a license, but you would have to go through the typical process. So I don't think this would change that at all. This would just, make sure that all licensing authorities in New Hampshire that are within Title 30 are required to essentially verify and provide digitally verifiable licenses.
Okay.
Which we do through our licensee lookup already.
Okay, so with all of your testimony thus far, I think I have wandered into the weeds a little bit, so help me get out, please.
Sure.
We're doing this already.
OPLC is doing this. I can't speak
Okay.
for other licensing bodies.
Okay. So this opens this up to another set of licensing bodies.
Yes, in Title 30.
Okay.
It's quite complicated the way the state has structured occupational regulation. They think that 332G was intended to be the catch-all, but it's not really. And then OPLC was intended to be the catch-all, but it's not really. So there are some outliers that this would apply to that are not within my office.
Okay, and what's Title 30? Like, this is new.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at this as,
Yep.
verifiable occupational licenses, and I thought, oh, well, there we go.
Yes.
Look, another OPLC bill. That's all we do around here. It's amazing.
I agree. It's all we do.
Yeah.
That's our purpose. of the
Yes,
committee.
that is all we do. We should rename the committee. Yep, it should totally be renamed. So, having been in those weeds for this long,
Yes.
now I'm finding out there's a whole nother pond of weeds.
Yes.
Who's in there?
So I don't have Title 30 memorized off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can tell you attorneys are in there. I think we've migrated most people over. I don't think EMS licensure is in there.
Sorry, did you say most people over to you or away
Yes.
from you? Oh, to you, okay.
I don't think EMS licensure is in Title 30. I would have to check. But those are the things that come to mind. EMS licensure of, septic installers. I would want to confirm whether they're in Title 30. But essentially what it is there's a structure of statutes, and you've got Title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Title 30 is, I think, titled occupational regulation, and it's supposed to all relate to occupational regulation. And OPLC is within that, and so is 332G. But we do have license types that are not within it, like nursing home administrators, boxing and wrestling. So technically, this wouldn't apply to them.
So may I follow up one more time?
One more.
So now that we've got established that you've got your group, that you've established what the minimum standards are for New Hampshire and how that compares to other states, that's done.
Yes.
This is now engaging that process for this whole new group in Title 30. Is that what, am I following this?
This would only require that licensing authorities in New Hampshire provide for procedures for digitally verifiable licenses. They already have existing statutory requirements to have a reciprocity analysis.
There we go. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
So that's,
I'm not being clear.
yeah, that's the baseline.
Yes,
And now we
yes.
want to verify
Correct.
already what our minimum standards are state by state. So if there is a state that doesn't meet our minimum standards, even if they're on the app, it will tell them you actually are missing some professional development credits or a certain whatever
Yeah.
licensure. So, okay, I got it. Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that.
So I'll go back.
We're out of the weeds.
I'll go back to the second part of my first question. Will this create any conflicts that you can see within OPLC or any of the licensing bodies that, for what we're currently doing?
Yeah, I think the only conflicts would be, and this is something that we'd be happy to work on. Again, we support the concept would be in the proposed 332G7-4 discusses procedures for issuing digitally verifiable licensures. I think that would conflict with what we have in Chapter 310 because the OPLC adopts procedures. We would want to make sure we retain that authority. I could potentially read 332G to just be the licensing body, which would be us, but I think that would be the potential conflict.
Something simple to fix, any suggestions?
Yeah, it's a simple fix.
Do you have a suggestion for language?
Yeah, I think I would just say, I would probably redefine Board or Commission under this title to be defined as regulatory authority or licensing authority. So it could include OPLC rather than specifically carving out OPLC because
Which line is that? Because I'm trying to. See, my copy.
I'm on line.
So that's what.
I'm on line 14.
Okay.
You would have to have a new section to redefine in 332G if it's not already defined, board or commission.
Okay.
And I could submit language to Senator Carson or anybody.
Gotcha. Oh, all right. Hey, look at that, a copy with line numbers on it. Now I'm up to speed. That makes it complicated to follow.
Are you
got that
saying
down.
a replacement of, on line 14, replacement of every board or commission to regulatory authority or licensing authority? Is that what you're saying? Or adding those words or replacing the word board or commission?
You could do it either way. You could define board or commission to be the regulatory authority, or you could say board, commission, or other regulatory authority. You could do it either way. I think
Is it not simpler to say regulatory authority or licensing authority?
I think it's
6 of one,
whatever
half a dozen of another?
whatever you desire, Senator.
Well, we want it to be clear, so you don't come back here next year and go, you know what? Turns out that was really complicated and I need you to clean that language up.
We don't want to have this in a veto message.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Senator Perkins Court.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, this conversation's been really helpful. I think there's probably some drafting tweaks we can discuss offline, but if I just writ large am understanding the process correctly, the role of the app is really something that could take place today, because what the app is doing is taking publicly available information and comparing it to publicly available information. What you're doing internally is separate and is more substantive as opposed to procedural, and is creating a list where, pursuant to HB 594 last year, some states have substantially similar requirements. You're creating that list for those states and those licenses. It's essentially similar to waiving in, and that is also creating efficiency. So they're separate, really, doing separate
Yes.
things, but they kind of work together.
Yes, and we're currently in the middle of an IT project.
Understanding. Yep.
Yes, that would include an app and a QR code component.
Okay. We're getting in.
We're getting in the weeds, but
Okay. No, and I'm trying not to get too in the weeds, because it's not like we need to understand every piece, but I think in terms of making sure we completely understand what you're doing and what this is adding, I think that's our job right now. So
Certainly.
I think I'm following.
All right.
Others agree.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Representative Magoo, my apologies, you were on a separate sheet and I did not have you listed, so come on up.
And sorry for being late. That's why
That's
I was on
okay.
the separate sheet. So it's ostensibly my fault for being triple booked this morning. I'll be really brief. You've heard a lot of great testimony. I'm Representative Tim McHugh. I represent Merrimack with a huge federal community. When I first heard about this bill, I thought to my own experiences. I've given some written testimony that you can not read at your leisure. But I'll just tell you a couple of stories real quick. I thought of my own experiences as an advanced practice paramedic who had already been certified nationally with a national number, a New York State number, a Massachusetts number, and a New Hampshire number. And the difficulty that I had getting that New York certification. It took about start to finish 5 months, I think. It's because there was largely a paper process. Now, I think some of this has been improved and since then, because I'm old and I've been doing it licensed for 33 years. But there are still parts of the process that require you to send a sealed, stamped envelope with a notarized Corey check in it, and it's paper process. Or you have to send the form rather. You send the form that you've authorized them that's notarized to New York. New York sends it back to New Hampshire. New Hampshire then uses your envelope and sends it back to New York. It's ridiculous. Same process I went through with Julie trying to get licensed in Florida. I was looking at an employment opportunity in Florida. Thankfully, they were a nursing compact state. Is everybody familiar with nursing compact? So that makes it a little bit easier, and it went a little faster, but still took about a month for her. And the harsh reality is most employers aren't going to offer you a job. Some will give you a contingent, but you can't actually work. So it's nice to get a contingent offer of employment, contingent upon actually getting licensure. The question is, how long will they hold that offer for you? There's nursing shortages, paramedic shortages, whatever. So they will try to lock you up. Anyways, whatever we can do to support, frankly, everyone, but a great start with this system. I did take a look at the technical part of it. I'm a pretty technical guy and I've launched a number of apps, so I get how this one works, and it seems good. It seems good. I did not have the same streamlined experience with OPLC the last time I tried, but I'm sure a few things have changed since then. But think about the real estate agents, insurance agents, house painters, massage therapists, cosmetologists, and on and on and on. People that often need to get working right away. So,
Thank you, Representative.
thanks.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. All right, that's the last person I have on the sheet. Anybody else like to testify on Senate Bill 485? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. Thank you, Member. Okay. All right, we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 372, and I will recognize Senator Murphy as the prime sponsor to introduce. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Keith Murphy, representing District 16. Mr. Chairman, I've always thought that one of the primary strengths of our legislature is that we have a body of people that have real-world experience. We were not paid a lot of money to be here. We've all had real jobs. Once in my life, when I had a lot less gray hair, I spent a year and a half as an apprentice electrician. It was actually my uncle who was the master we worked under. We had 4 apprentice electricians working under one master. And I tell you that story just because I want you to understand why I put the bill in. We all know there's a shortage of housing in this state. There's a lot of reasons, I think, for that shortage. But one of them is the cost of building here is very, very high. And one of the ways we can begin to mitigate that is to make it easier to enter these trades. Electricians, carpenters, plumbers, HVAC technicians. We need more people in those trades. That will begin to put a dent, one little piece of a very large puzzle that we need to solve as legislators. Here in New Hampshire, current regulations are that master plumbers can only supervise 1 apprentice. So the bill in front of you simply makes that 2. It would double. I apologize for that interruption. It would double the pipeline for entering that field and begin to mitigate the bottleneck that the state has created. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Senator. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you very much, sir.
Chris Schleier?
I don't know how you got that for my chicken scratch, but
Every now and again, we get lucky. Well, it's a big responsibility representing the entire community of Elm Grove, Colorado. So
Elm Grove, Colorado.
that's what you wrote on your representing Elm Grove, Colorado.
Oh, that's true. Elm Grove Co. Yeah. I figured my handwriting was so bad I'd stop at some point. Thank you for having me. And Senator Murphy, thank you for sponsoring this bill. Elm Grove Companies is a New Hampshire-based real estate development and property management firm involved in the development of market rate and workforce housing throughout the state. We own and manage about 1,600 apartments in New Hampshire and understand the challenges facing the state in terms of housing supply and the ongoing maintenance needs as well. We appreciate the support of Senator Murphy's effort on SB 372. So the apprenticeship program the purpose is to encourage employers, associations of employers and organizations of employees to establish apprenticeship programs and make the apprenticeship agreements, and to create opportunities for young people to obtain employment and adequate training in the trades. What we're seeing today is probably since around 2008, when the housing crisis happened, a significant reduction in the amount of people that are entering the trades. And of course, we're seeing a significant increase in the amount of people that are exiting the trades. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates that nearly 1/4 of the manufacturing workforce is 55 or older. As baby boomers age and retire, there aren't enough young people starting careers in the trades to fill these positions. The average age of boomers today is 65 years old. There already exists a shortage of trade workers, which is hampering the construction and real estate development industry. New Hampshire needs 25,000 new housing units by 2030. With most boomers set to retire by 2030, they'd be around 70 years old at that time. We need to act now to increase the number of licensed plumbers, electricians, and other trades people in New Hampshire in order to build the housing that's needed to be built. We're already experiencing the bottleneck, as Senator Murphy mentioned, of not having enough folks to do so. This is affecting real estate projects in terms of time and money. I fear that in 5-10 years it will only get worse. It will make it very difficult for us to reach those housing units goals that we have. So as a new employer of skilled tradespeople myself, I find it should be fairly easy for for a plumbing company, a plumber to apprentice or to mentor more than one apprentice at a time. Maybe smaller firms wouldn't be able to or wouldn't want to, but larger firms with larger projects should be able to easily manage more than one apprentice at any given time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate you coming
Easy
in.
enough. Thank you.
Joe Nash from the Mechanical Board.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Sorry for my late arrival. We just were made aware of this going on, and we realized the timing was off, and so I shot over from our Mechanical Board meeting that we just had. So again, I'm Joe Nash. I'm representing the Mechanical Board. What we just see in this is we've been working for like the last 2 years to try and increase our capacity with apprentices, working with the Department of Labor, because the Department of Labor is our stronghold on the apprentice program. They're the ones that create the structure, and so we basically refer to them a lot. In their structure, they ask for a 1-to-1 ratio. We've tried to steer them away from it. We've had trouble doing that just because it's a national program. What we have done is recently we passed used to be a 1-to-1 direct supervision, which was causing headaches for the job sites, because your company may have a ratio of untapped power with the office and other people that just can't be on the job site. So we actually passed something where after 2 years of experience, you no longer have to have direct supervision. So it allows the companies to hire a lot more apprentices, as long as they maintain a 1-to-1 in the company, as well as still being compliant with the Department of Labor. What the board is basically asking is, we may need a little time to consider this and consider the ramifications if we go through this. What we've seen in the past, if we aren't compliant with the Department of Labor, we'd have to create our own apprentice program, which would just take some time to do. We are always for creating capacity in the field and getting more people into this and always like that. That's why we tried to find a happy medium with this last bill, creating that direct supervision for the 1-to-1 so we maintain public safety. Then after 2 years experiences, as they can be off on their own with the direct line to a licensed person.
Excuse me. Thank you.
So I guess all in all, we're just asking for a little time for the board to consider this and the ramifications.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then you're concerned that if we pass this bill, it might put you in a position where you had to create your own apprentice program?
We wouldn't, in our past, when we've tried to talk to the Department of Labor, I haven't had time to consult them this week, but in the last year or two, we would no longer be in compliance. You could put yourself out of compliance if you're a 1-to-2 ratio. If your company happens to be a 1-to-1, even though the rules say something else, you could still be in the Department of Labor. But as soon as you go outside that, then we would have to create basically our own apprentice program.
Okay.
And it would give us time. We'd have to have time to do that if that's the direction of everybody. Like I said, we try to create that happy medium in the meantime. With that 2 years experience or more, you're allowed to be just supervised, not directly supervised.
Thank you. Senator Altshuler.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. If this were to pass, it wouldn't require that you go 2-to-1. It just says that the maximum is 2-to-1. You could continue to stay 1-to-1 and be in compliance while developing another program, could you not?
The way I read it was our rules wouldn't allow a ratio of less than 1-to-2. Our maximum couldn't be less than 1-to-2, is what I thought.
Right, but it's not.
So if we had
The maximum couldn't be less than 1-to-2, but the minimum can be 1-to-1.
It was read kind of weird, yeah.
It took me about 8 reads
Yeah.
to do the math and okay.
Because I think
it's convoluted. Yes.
I think the intent is they would like a 1-to-2 ratio in the long term.
Yeah, that's what my understanding is, but it doesn't say.
And I think you're right, because we took it. I just read it this morning with our
Right.
board administration.
Okay, is this a shall may? Is it a shall may?
I'm reading it like you are, but I understand what he's saying.
Right, okay, yep,
So-
a little confusion.
I-
I think you're gonna tease this
Well, I'm going to go to Senator Perkins Coker wanted to ask a question, so I'm going to.
Well, my question was separate. I read it the same way, which is that on the regulatory side, the maximum ratio has to be set at least 2 to 1. It can be set differently, which is a policy question we should probably answer. But
Is permitted, though, are you reading that is permitted, so you're also may be permitted to do less?
yeah,
Well, I
I
don't know.
hear you. I do have
Okay.
a question for our
All right.
testifier here.
Let's stay with that. We can hash this out a little later.
Okay. I guess I understand what you're saying about needing to create your own apprenticeship program. Could you let us know what's the benefit to being inside the Department of Labor apprenticeship program? Like, are there a lot of administration issues that it would create for you to be outside?
The one thing that was brought to attention is any federal programs. If you're not a part of the apprentice program, you wouldn't be in compliance in those places. You could elect to be separate to the Department of Labor at that time as a company,
Yep.
as long as you're within their rules. And then I imagine you'd be fine at that point. I could get into the intricacies and talk to the Department of Labor and more hypotheticals, like if we forego you, how would we do federal work in New Hampshire? And that's the root of this, is we just would like a little time as a board to discuss the impact.
And I think that's fine. I won't speak for the chair. I understand that request perfectly. I'm just trying to understand substantively what being inside the EOL apprenticeship program means, and it sounds like it's related to being contracted to do federal work at minimum.
Long term, yeah.
Okay.
Because what we tried to do is try to nudge them to a different ratio. Didn't go well, wasn't successul. So
Yeah.
the only way to do it is, new apprentice program. And then I think you'd be able to still elect them as a company if you want to do federal work.
Okay.
Okay.
Might be
All
some
right.
more pieces here, but.
I think you've given us a few things to chew on. Any
Yes.
further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for
I
coming.
think so. Yeah, and like I said before, we're for trying to create more opportunity for the apprentices, and anything we can do to help, that'd be great.
All right, well, certainly, if you have further thoughts on this, please forward them to myself or the whole committee.
Absolutely.
We'll
All right, thanks, everyone.
appreciate it. Okay, that's all I have on the sheets. Anybody else want to testify on Senate Bill 372? Yeah, come on up, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome. Could you state your name?
Yeah, David Pelletier, Dunbarton, New Hampshire. I also represent the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 131. And I had signed in online in opposition, and the main reason is I spoke to the Department of Labor yesterday, Win Young over there, and this puts us out of compliance with the DOL apprenticeship. And right now, the only way to have an apprenticeship in the state of New Hampshire for plumbing is through the Department of Labor. So I think we're just moving, this bill is just a little too soon. I certainly understand the labor issues and everything else, but I think there needs to be more work behind the scenes for this, before we can get this done. That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming, and I'm curious if in your conversation with the Department of Labor, if you had kind of teased out the requirement, that you couldn't have more than 2, but you could possibly still remain within the 1-to-1, which would keep in compliance?
We did not talk about
Did not,
that.
okay.
You know, I asked specifically what the requirement was for the Department of Labor plumbing apprenticeship, and he said it's 1-to-1. So,
And
he
that-
was just made aware of this
May I follow up?
also and was looking for more guidance from his national office, so that's all I can say.
Okay, may I follow up?
Follow it? Yep.
So when bidding on federal jobs, your apprenticeship program has to be within the structures of the Department of Labor, which is a 1-to-1 requirement.
That is correct.
So does that mean the company can only be doing one-to-one within the structure of the, whoever's doing the bid, or just on that particular job? And that if you were to be doing a private job somewhere else, you could exercise the opportunity to use 2-to-1?
I think the issue more is that to register an apprentice in the state of New Hampshire, you have to fall under that one-to-one
Got it,
currently.
okay,
So you cannot be an apprentice
thank you.
on a job site or registered with the state if your company's out of compliance.
Thank you.
That's
There's
what I
the-
believe was the issue.
Okay,
I was heading in that same question, so.
yeah, where does it, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the clarification, appreciate that.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last call. Anybody else wants to testify on 372? Seeing none, we're going to close the hearing. Oh, my apologies, I grabbed the wall.
Apologies, I didn't have my microphone on. We
Sorry
will
about
now
that.
open the public hearing for SB 323FN, and we welcome the prime sponsor, Senator Pearl.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 323 relative to the definition of salons. So I originally put this bill in. I had a constituent who made a request who was trying to do in-home care for folks who weren't able to get out to like a hair salon for cosmetology or, hair coloring, just basic in-home things for people who are not able to get out to a facility, licensed facility, in order to do it. When we were looking at filing this bill, I also consulted with Director Courtney about the rules pertaining to this within the current statute. So concurrently, I filed this bill more as a placeholder if we needed it, while she filed thank you. A petition for a declaratory ruling. Sorry, I left half my notes up there. And they were kind of running together. So in the interim, from the time that I filed the bill till now, the declaratory ruling came back from the Board of Cosmetology and ruled in favor of that this person could, people could do this in-home without needing the changes that are in this bill. So I've given you all a copy of that petition for the declaratory ruling, just so that you can review it if you would like to, and have it more for your records if you do at some point have a constituent that asks you. But it is my intent at this point to ask the committee to ITL this bill, because we do not need it, because through the petition process, we have found out that practice that we were trying to allow is allowed. So we'll make this one really easy. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, on the hearing sheet, I have Director Courtney signed up to speak, if you'd like to come forward.
I really need to speak if you have questions.
Does anyone have any questions? All right,
Thank you.
looks like we're all set. And that's all I have. I'll close the public hearing on 323. And the gavel back to the chair.
here. Yeah, please do. Okay.
I'm never punctual, so this is very nice.
Okay, we will open up the hearing on Senate Bill 371. The prime sponsor is here, Senator Fenton.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Chairman Pearl and members of the committee, I am State Senator Donovan Fenton, and I represent District 10. For several sessions in collaboration with the OPLC, this committee and House ED&A has worked hard to streamline licensing processes. This work has ensured timely access to licensure and gainful employment in New Hampshire. Last year, HB 655 created a lot of efficiencies within OPLC. One of those was moving all license renewals to every 2 years. This is largely celebrated. However, there is one group now that has some concerns about the 2-year requirement, and that is resident physicians. Currently, the Board of Medicine is working with hospitals to license their forthcoming resident physicians. OPLC is working toward an online system, which I believe will be live by June 30th this year. Our resident physicians are concerned about their ability to support the licensure of these residents. This bill would allow the board to work with OPLC to allow for licenses that are slightly longer than 2 years, removing the requirement that a resident physician renew their license in the middle of residency. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I'm still making sure I understand what a residency physician is. But any further information you have on that?
I will try to define resident physicians, but I have a feeling someone from Dartmouth is behind me as well.
Okay.
Resident physicians are doctors in training, so
Okay.
I understand.
All right. Wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. See no questions. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you guys very much.
Director Courtney.
And I'm going to sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Lindsay Courtney, Executive Director, OPLC. The OPLC does not take a position on this bill. I can give you a little context surrounding resident physician licensure, which is that historically Dartmouth has only had physician residents. Residents are required to be licensed. Typically, a residency is around 4 years. But the statute, RSA 329, basically requires them to obtain a license, and the license ends upon conclusion of their residency or 4 years. Historically, what had happened is Dartmouth had basically packaged everything up and sent everything in, and we sent everything back. But with some changes in process and legislation, and with the fact that other facilities are now offering or using resident physicians, we've moved the onus to licensure back on the licensee, which is probably where it belongs. So that's the context of how this came to be, which is a change in process and a change in time frame. I think someone from Dartmouth can probably speak better to the reasons why they want to keep the 4-year licensure. But I wanted to provide you with that background, and we don't have any position on this particular piece of legislation. I'm happy to answer any questions, though.
So if we change this, this isn't, the way I'm reading this is it's not saying we're going back to a 4-year, it's saying they're not going to be 2 years.
Yeah, I think if you read it in conjunction with paragraph 2, the Board of Medicine would have the ability to adopt rules establishing the duration of licensure, which I think the intent would likely be 4 years or the conclusion of the residency.
Okay.
I will say it's very difficult to monitor conclusion of the residency. Our preference, regardless of whether it's in rule or statute, would be to have a conclusion, a date certain that the license concludes. Otherwise, you leave an opportunity for somebody to be licensed to somebody who's required to be supervised, who's no longer affiliated with a supervisor.
So they could be a resident physician indefinitely if there was no termination date? Is that what your concern is?
Yes, or that they could leave their residency and we may not know about that and they would still have a license.
Okay. is that something that you feel should be worked on in rules, or we should be spelling out here in this statute?
I think we could do it in rules, certainly. I think we could do that in rules. This proposed bill gives the rulemaking authority to the board.
You're comfortable with that?
I don't oppose it.
Okay.
I think my preference would be to wait and, wait until next legislative session to see how all this pans out, because we are still in a transition phase and migrating to a new solution, but we don't oppose it.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator Altshuler.
So the hesitancy on OPLC's part is that there's no end date certain, correct? That's
Yes.
one of the hesitancies.
Yep, although that could be established in rules, correct.
But that could be established in rules, but that's
Correct.
one of the hesitancies, that
Yes.
there's no established end date certain. And that, is there any hesitancy in the length of time frame if there were a date certain and it were, for instance, 3 years or 4 years? Is there a date certain that would be just too long without having had that review?
I think a biennial review is appropriate, because you're not required to be constantly undergoing review. It reduces administrative burden, but there is that check-in point. I understand the argument that resident physicians are slightly different. It's for a limited period of time. I guess my one concern, if you call it, I don't think it's a concern, but is that we want to be very careful that we're not going to eat away the general rule with exceptions. And I think we need to give the general rules a little bit of time to make sure it works. From an internal control standpoint, we like having the time frame be consistent so that we can educate and train staff and appropriately communicate with licensees. I'm not saying that, the exception would would take over in this case, but that is just a general concern with any exceptions.
Okay, follow up?
Oh.
And if I understood you previously, the hospital would be bundling all of their residents' applications and submitting it on their behalf as a group from the hospital. And now you're saying that each one of those residents now has to do that process on their own.
Yes, as
Okay.
any other licensee, correct.
Exactly. I'm just,
Yes.
I'm looking at the progress of how this has been rolling out. So there's no reason that the hospital can't assist in getting this done with them.
I would defer to the hospital. I
Right.
think, there are always challenges on the back end, but
Sure.
certainly, I mean, if you want a license, you have to apply for a license. And I think that's pretty basic for anybody. So, and I don't think that they're disputing that, but I just wanted to provide that context.
All right. Thank you for all the clarification on the process.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Further questions? Seeing none?
Thank you for your time.
Courtney Tanner from Dartmouth Health. Welcome.
Thank you very much. For the record, Courtney Tanner, Director of Government Relations at Dartmouth Health. And I apologize to Director Courtney. I told her that I could testify before her, but I was across the street. So we asked for this bill to go forward because as you noted, Senator Altshuler, there will be changes forthcoming in the licensing processes. And it sounds like you're well versed with those changes. We're submitting them now in bundled batches, and this will be a change. And we certainly appreciate and respect OPLC's desire to streamline administrative processes. We're very willing to see how that shakes out, and we're eager to work with OPLC on the rules proper and the forthcoming online process. So if it's okay with the committee, I'm comfortable retaining the bill today and to use as a vehicle if we need some kind of support in the future if the new process is not working for this subgroup of people. I completely appreciate the sentiment that we don't want to carve away the streamlining with exceptions. And so we're excited and eager to work with Director Courtney and her team to make sure that the new process is going to work for this subpopulation.
So we're in the second year of our session. We don't have the ability to re-refer like we do in the first year. So our options are we can pass it, we can not pass it, or we can interim study. So, I mean, we can hold this for a little while in committee, but it is a fiscal note bill, and if we're going to move it forward, we need to do so within a month or so at the very latest. So we've got a little time.
We're hoping for answers soon.
Okay. We don't need to move on this right away, but we can give it some time. So just sort of as a timeline for you to know what we're working under as a committee. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. I hit my mic. Anybody else that would like to testify on Senate Bill 371? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. How far away is he? Should just be across the hall. Okay.
Yes.
We'll open up the next hearing in just a minute. We're waiting for the prime sponsor to come over. Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. All right, with the arrival of the prime sponsor, we will open Senate Bill 306. Good morning, Senator Avard, and welcome to ED&A.
How are you?
Doing well, thank you. You don't want me to sing to you.
I'm prime sponsor. Sorry about that. For the record, I'm Senator Kevin Avard, prime sponsor of this bill, 306, and I did submit it on behalf of one of my constituents, and of course with new information that came before me, we did submit a replace all amendment, and so I'll just talk briefly about that, and I might have to scoot. Okay. We got a lot going on.
Busy day.
Very busy day, yeah. So I'll read it to you though. Good morning, I'm here to introduce SB 306, which relates to the Manufacturing Housing Board. I have with me an amendment for the committee to consider, which is a replace all of the original bill. This amendment addresses the intent of the original language and corrects an unintended consequence of recent statutory changes. New Hampshire has established a dispute resolution program that met the minimum HUD requirements until the rules of the Installation Standard Board for manufacturing houses expired in 2022. This has left the state without a program and subjects the state to HUD dispute resolution program. The Installation Standards Board has a quorum issues and met once in 2022 and 3 times in 2023. The board meets again January 4th, 2024, and was able to address the expired rules at that meeting. However, based on recent statutory changes, it is more appropriate for the rules to reside with the Office of Professional Licensure and Certificate, OPLC. And at the suggestion of OPLC Study Committee, the rules authority pertaining to the procedures include disciplinary and non-disciplinary procedures was transferred to OPLC last session in HB 655 and HB 409. These changes were effective July 1st, 2023 and July 15th, 2023. This proposal is consistent with the changes made in HB 605 and HB 409 and other legislative initiatives. If the proposed languages were to pass, OPLC include the manufacturing housing dispute resolution procedures in its PLC 200S. In fact, I don't know what that means.
It's okay.
The Installation Standards Board for Manufacturing Housing would remain in place. This change simply clarifies the rulemaking authority for its non-disciplinary procedure lies with OPLC rather than the board. This will allow the agency to ensure that the requirements of HUD are met and that the rulemaking is undertaken and as needed so that this program remains in place. There are representatives from OPLC that can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee?
Thank you, because I got to go sing. I got some kids.
All right, well, go
But
enjoy that. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
coming.
much for your consideration, and enjoy a blessed, wonderful day.
All right. Director Courtney, do you want to come up and explain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Lindsay Courtney, Executive Director, OPLC. OPLC fully supports the amendment proposed by Senator Avard and wishes to thank him for bringing this forward. I echo everything that he said, which is essentially there are some compliance issues with respect to HUD regulations, specifically 24 CFR Part 3288, which essentially requires the state to have certain alternative dispute resolution procedures in place. Now, the Installers Board currently has those procedures in their rules, but those rules expired in 2022, and as Senator Avard mentioned, has had significant issues with quorum. And the challenge with that particular board is that the majority of the members are not nominated by the governor, so it's completely outside of the state's control. They are moving this forward, but given that the procedures have really resided with OPLC, we think it's appropriate that we be able to engage in rulemaking to establish the procedures and make sure that we're in compliance. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the committee? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Back to the weeds. So we heard a lot last year about the Board of Manufactured Housing and some of the challenges that were that they were facing. And I'm looking at this amendment, and it does nothing to address the establishment of the board and who's on it. So is that going to remain? I mean, where is that going to remain unaddressed? Because the original bill was an insertion of a board established, members' terms, chair people. So where does that piece of it stand?
So I think there are two different issues because there's the Installers Board and then there was the Manufactured Housing Complaint Board.
Yep.
And so the installers already has authority and a requirement to have a manufactured home dispute resolution program. And so the adjudication of those disputes, as proposed by the amendment, would still reside with the board that has the regulatory authority, which is the installers board, and the procedures would be crafted by OPLC. But the proposed amendment does not address, I think, some of the issues that were discussed last year, and the OPLC does not take a position on that at this time. I do think that the state probably needs to look into the issue further, but I don't know that reestablishing the board in the previously existing format would meet the objective.
Follow up?
Oh.
So in the amendment being put forward, OPLC would have the rulemaking authority to establish a housing dispute resolution in rules, or be executing housing dispute resolutions?
So essentially the HUD requirements are that we have an alternative dispute resolution process, which typically includes actual arbitration or mediation. So we would say in our procedures, this is how you submit a request for arbitration, this is how you submit a request for mediation, and that presumably that person, which is a voluntary process, everybody agrees to be bound by that typically, that person would have the authority. You know, the board could say that we will mediate. I mean, they could want to do that. But typically it's either arbitration or mediation with a qualified mediator or arbitrator.
So if I'm understanding, this bill, this amendment would let OPLC craft the procedures, but the board would still adjudicate the disputes.
The board, yes, all boards adjudicate disputes, correct. The procedures would provide, as required by HUD, an alternative to the disciplinary process. They would provide ADR and mediation. So typically, and this is why it's a little unique, OPLC only deals with enforcement matters when you have licensure issues. These concerns address manufacturing defects, and so it's really just providing a mechanism, a lower cost mechanism for those folks to resolve their disputes. I suppose the board could decide to be that neutral third party, but we could also work with them depending on what they would like to do to farm that out to a mediator or arbitrator.
And this would satisfy the HUD requirements?
This would satisfy the HUD requirements.
Thank you. Further questions?
Question. So clarification for my own edification on this whole topic. Do the HUD requirements require arbitration or mediation, or is there remedies that can be sought by complainants through the judicial system?
You always have a judicial mechanism. The HUD requirements are only that the state has a process in place for alternative dispute resolution.
Has a process in place for alternative dispute resolution, but that process is not mandatory.
Correct.
Got it. So you can opt to go to mediation or arbitration, or if you're the complainant, you can opt to skip over that and go in a different route, right? There's nothing that's going to create a longer barrier towards resolution if a complainant wants to move forward in any direction.
Yeah, and I think the intent is to provide greater access. If you have, it's expensive to litigate, but you certainly always have that option, and you always have the option to file a complaint with DOJ, DOJ's Consumer Protection.
So one more follow-up. Sure. Yeah, in the original bill, there, I'm looking at page 2. So I had reviewed the original bill, and on page 2 and lines 10 through 23 there's an opportunity for, for parties to issue a complaint or a concern about a specific rule, that they felt that this rule was inappropriate. Does that now fall under these HUD? Is that part of the mediation or arbitration? Like, how does, there's two separate ways.
There's
two
two
separate
issues.
conflicts that could
Yes.
be happening. One is a conflict, with the building, right?
Correct.
And one is a conflict with the rules around how we build the buildings or manage the parks, or, so in those two spaces, how does this amendment address this part of the original bill?
Yes, the amendment does not address the latter part.
Okay. So I didn't,
No, you're
in
you're
the
on-
weeds.
Nope, you're on point.
Okay, great, thank you. All
Other
right.
questions?
Is it necessary to address that, though?
I think that's a whole different topic.
Well, it's still in the original bill.
It is in
The
the-
amendment
Yes.
would take all of those out.
Right. And that is the sponsor's request.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, Julie Smith. Good morning and welcome to EDNA.
Good morning, committee.
Turn your mic on, please.
Okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Julie Smith from Nashua. I support this bill. I was very unhappy that SB 203 didn't make it across the finish line, and I'll use the vice chair's word spoken into the Senate chamber mic. She used the word dysfunctional. Homeowners associations, condo associations, co-op trailer parks, and even New York City high-rise MDUs have that attribute in common, and so do ordinary trailer parks. What all the others have in common is an entity that handles residents' disputes as a last resort before litigation, which I don't think I should have to point out as cost prohibitive. I'll mention that $280 is the plaintiff's upfront court filing expense and an additional $118 for the sheriff if necessary. And as a pro se plaintiff against the city of Nashua, I can say that our courts are not always the blind justice that one might think, but I won't digress. Any resident of communities that does not get satisfaction on any dispute ruling can vote to replace those elected board members in a hopefully clean and uncorrupt election at the end of their term. That luxury is not available to ordinary trailer park residents. We are just glorified tenants, functionally speaking, and without the realistic option of given a 30 days notice to move out. I will refer to the committee to the words spoken on February 15th by the distinguished late Mr. Clegg. I appreciate all he said that day. Other than park rent being raised by $25 on January 1st, not much of interest has happened since I spoke on February 15th. I'll save the committee some time by saying that what I said then still applies today. In addition to my tap water interruption story, there's the road blocking story from September 5th, which both the vice chair and the sponsor have already been briefed on. While no intelligent person would dispute the merits of removing a dangerous tree, my issue was with the surprise element. A good faith 24-hour notice for such scheduled inconvenience would have been acceptable. Blocking access to a dwelling is a violation of RSA 540-A:3 Roman numeral 2. And as I noted last year, I take issue with my redress of grievances against park management being chilled by fear of reprisal. Just one resident, the 7th from the cul-de-sac, got a door knock, and only because his car was parked in his driveway was the most desirable place to set up the crane. Residents of the 6 other lots on that dead-end street did not get any notice at all. Like SB 203, this bill offers a pathway to addressing such disrespect against ordinary trailer park residents. Former Alderman Liu once said she thought City Hall to be a form of customer service. The same can be said about park management. If several inches of snow fell after closing time on Friday and the roads inside the park are still unusable on Saturday, it's not unreasonable to expect the night answering service to tell the caller when the snow is to be removed. When such things happen enough times and are documented, there should be an affordable tribunal to take such grievances to. SB 306 is the solution. The death of SB 203 was a disappointment, and I appreciated the efforts to revive it, both from the lawyer for introducing Budget Amendment 2141S and the vice chair for voting correctly on that amendment. My understanding was that SB 203 went to Committee of Conference over OPLC issues, ultimately contributing to such a bizarre roll call in the Senate. My hope is that SB 306 will have unanimous support this time around. Please consider that the late Mr. Clegg would also support this bill and vote ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions? Yeah, Senator Altshuler.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for your testimony. Have you seen this amendment?
It was just given to me now.
Us too. Us too. Yeah.
PK told me about it 10 minutes ago, and given it a precursory look over while waiting for my turn to speak, I, as a lay person, don't see any problems with it. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Well, you're always welcome to submit more testimony to the committee. If you, in further review, you have some thoughts you want to share with us, please do.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Bonnie Gowrie? All set? All right. That's the last one I have on the list. Anybody else like to speak on Senate Bill 306? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. So I was hoping we could exec some bills today, but with only 3 of us here, I'm not sure that we can do that. We can. Yeah. We've got, well, I guess the one that we could exec is 323, which was my bill, the definition of law, and I want ITL, if we want to do that. So I'm going to accept a motion, go into exec session.
I make a motion that we go into exec session.
Motion moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, I want to move ITL on Senate Bill 323.
So moved.
I'll speak to my own motion. Oh, do we have a second? Oh, I moved it. You second. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. So as I explained, this bill isn't necessary anymore, so I would like to see us just ITL it. We can't put it on consent, obviously, with just the 3 of us, but it can be just a simple floor speech. I know we don't have a lot of bills on the 18th, so adding one more 2-minute floor speech probably won't be a problem as I bring it out. So, any, I know you haven't really had a chance to review the order that I passed out to you, the paperwork, but is there any questions that any of you have before we move for a vote? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I will take that out, Kevin. I don't have any more bills that we can move right now. Does anybody else have anything further? Okay. I will accept a motion to come out of exec.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
With our business being concluded for the day? Yes, unless, do you have a question?
Yes,
Procedural question.
calendar question.
Yes.
Look at the calendar, so are we, no, we're not gonna be able to get anything on the calendar for next,
This was it.
this was it.
Yeah, and then the next session will be February 1, I think, whatever that Thursday is.
Everything's gonna be loaded into that one. Are
What?
we doing any, are we doing a double hearing day?
It's not my intention at this point. It looks like if we stay on our Wednesday schedule with what I have planned, that we should be able to conclude all of our bills that we have by February 7th, hearings. By February 7th,
Okay.
yes.
So we'll do almost all of this on the first and then have some stragglers.
We'll have some on the first. I'm sure we'll have some of these that we need some things. I'm really pushing on the FNs specifically so that they can get to finance for second committee.
Okay.
So that, because we're going to have.
Coming in on Friday to
I am not.
schedule in
I am not at this point. At this point, I do not see a need for it. I'm not up to speed yet on what's gonna come over from the House on retained bills yet, so.
If that is not your desire, then I'm sure you're going to do all the things to make sure that doesn't happen.
I would prefer not to, and I
Trust you on that.
I think we have time enough. My hope is that we can just stay on our normal, regularly scheduled Wednesday mornings, and that's my hope. It looks like most of our bills aren't gonna be complicated enough that they're gonna require lengthy hearings, which is helpful. So I'm able to get 5 or 6 in on a regular week, which allows us to move through in a reasonable time. So
Yeah, there are some committees that are just
there are.
up to their eyeballs, so.
If nothing further, then we're done for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank